I'm sitting up this time. I'm good. At least for now. Welcome, Hearties, to part 2 of the recap of season 11, episode 12, Anything for Love, the finale. Now we'll talk about everything else. All right, but first, I do have to start with a quote from Nathan because it applies to so many people in the episode. So, fate. I think fate is taking what life gives you and turning it into what you want. So many people in this episode have done that.
Oh,
and
100%. Yes, because I also just my younger daughter's been rewatching, or she's been watching season 10 for the first time. She was not interested when it was on. She's trying to catch up. And so we saw a lot of the beginnings of Mike and May again.
Yes.
And that is such a good example of characters that have taken what is in front of them and making it work, making it be what they want it to be.
Making lemons into lemonade, right?
Definitely.
But think about everyone else.
Yeah.
Joseph and Minnie, Angela, Gowan. He's made a lot of lemonade over the years out of really sour lemons. He didn't at first. He learned how.
Yes.
And Faith, Fiona, so many people in this episode have taken what life has given them, and if they liked what life gave them, they ran with it. If they didn't like what life was giving them, then they used their will and their choices to turn it into what they wanted. It was, so yeah, it's a beautiful way to start out the episode, is to think about all the ways that so many of these people, Bill, I didn't even mention Bill. Yeah. I mean, he wow, look at what he's done with himself. And they have taken everything by the horns. You know, they've had their downfalls, but they've gotten back up. Are we ready to do some basking?
More basking?
More basking.
We are ready. We have our matching heart scarves.
We are ready to talk about the wedding. Go into the chapel and we're gonna get married. Okay. But first, let's chat about a few other points, like Lee and Rosemary. They had some stellar moments in this episode. They've had stellar moments in the whole season, but they had some really stellar moments in this particular episode. Have you noticed that they have really upped the simultaneous thoughts coming out of their mouths?
Yes, I noticed that big time in the previous episode, and then in this episode was just like, oh, we're still doing that. Okay.
And in the season, it seems like they've done a lot of it this season.
Yes, I think part of that is, I mean, I'm sure it's writers. I want to give writers credit, but I bet part of that is because after working together for so long, Pascal and Kevin probably naturally start to do that sort of thing themselves. I've seen them in interviews kind of sort of start to talk about something and then like say the same
well, yeah, that's true.
At the end of a sentence. And so my guess would be writers are maybe incorporating that into the writing because it comes so naturally for them. That would just be a guess. They're so compatible. They are such great screen partners that
yes,
it just lends itself to that sort of thing naturally and works great for the characters as well.
It really does, because the characters, we know the actors are in sync with each other, but the characters are really, I mean, you think back on their history, it happened quickly, which I don't mind, but Lee is the character that took a character that nobody liked and turned her into something that we all loved to watch because no one liked her at the
Nobody,
beginning.
nobody liked her.
Nobody liked her. I specifically remember thinking when I was watching season 2 for the first time, I was binge watching it on Netflix, but that's okay. When I was watching season 2 for the first time and Jack told Elizabeth that he was coming with her to Hamilton, I said, "That's good. That's good. He doesn't need to be there with Rosemary there. No."
Right. Yeah. Whole other
And
added component to that.
and then here comes a man on a motorcycle. And he just blows into town with his tough guy but charismatic attitude. You know what I'm
Which
saying?
I do. I think it's funny because tough guy would not be the first way I'd describe Lee
No,
now.
not anymore. Not anymore, but a grown man riding into town on a
Yeah.
motorcycle was kind of a tough guy
It,
image at that
no,
point.
it very much was. But I
Yeah.
find that so ironic that his characters, that first impression was definitely a little different than he has evolved to be.
Yes, very true. Well, so is Rosemary's, to be fair.
That's
But and then watching the two of them interact, I didn't mind seeing Rosemary there in Hope Valley anymore because they had a great chemistry. They had a great banter going back and forth and just topping each other and quick-witted. And he took Rosemary and made her a character that we like to watch because of the way he interacted with her, how he never let her get away with anything. And even though she was the way she was, he still fell in love with her. And he was just, do you remember how smitten he was with her? It was so cute. It was
mm-hmm.
so cute how smitten he was with her. And now they've been married for 8 years. They said that earlier in the season. So now we have a numeral that we can actually tie to it. They've been married for 8 years and they can read each other. They can almost think what the other's thinking, and they have a kind of telepathy going between them. And then they speak simultaneously with those thoughts. And it's just so much fun to watch. It's just so much fun to watch.
Yeah, very much.
So, very much, yes. And of course, we have, okay, I consider this a cliffhanger. Nobody else talked about this being a cliffhanger, but I consider
Right?
it one.
No. Mm-hmm.
The national park?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the way Lucas phrased it, it could have meant many different things, or at least a few different things. You know, he wasn't necessarily asking him to move.
I don't
You
think
know,
so.
he could have just been like, I need you to come to some meetings in Capital City and we can,
Yeah, business trip.
to help me handle some stuff. Like it could have literally been like, I'll need you to come out like 3 different days. Like, it could have been something very simple. And they took it as much more serious. It could have been, middle of the road, like, yeah, come out and spend a couple weeks
I was going to
getting
say
this,
a month.
I mean, it's tough to say.
Yeah.
But I also feel like it definitely has, it doesn't have to be some big scary thing that is going to like take the whole season 12 and turn it on its head. It
No.
very much could be something in past seasons. We've started right where the cliffhanger leaves off. And then over the course of that episode or the beginning of the second episode of the season, we've had a small time drop
Right.
of a few weeks or a few months. It's usually not very big.
That's what happened this season.
And that's what happened this season. It's happened many other times. same as, or vice versa, that's the end of the season. Like in season 3, you saw Jack recover rather quickly. So hopefully that can be maybe a piece that is just time jumped very briefly, especially if it's a period of a couple weeks, a couple meetings. They can show a montage. They can just be like, you know, Lee joined Lucas for a few meetings. They took care of this, and now we're picking up wherever we're picking up.
You know, I wouldn't, to be completely honest, I wouldn't mind if he wasn't in the first episode of season 12 and they said he's gone, he's been gone for a while, and then in the second episode he comes home.
Right.
Like they did with their cruise.
I also think though that they could show that could be part of the season,
Yes,
is showing
absolutely.
him and Lucas in Capital City working on that.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think there was so much backlash with season 2 taking place, so many scenes taking place in Hamilton. And yet, I think if you found a really good balance, there's a lot of benefits to having scenes here and there in other locations. I know that's a challenge filming wise for them to have other sets created, and I mean they reuse the sets in Jamestown, but yeah, it's still a challenge within that. Even if they've got the space to do it and they can change a building to look like another place, it's still a challenge for them. They've got to redress the set and change all of the props out. But if you had one location that you were constantly going to, an office in Capital City, and so you were not having to do a lot of different set changes, I think that could be really exciting and fun to just have a glimpse of what these characters are doing in other places.
I agree.
But yes, we don't want him to move. We don't want, but we also know that they're trying to find a balance for Lucas as well. Lucas can't stay in Hope Valley. He was in Hope Valley a lot this year for somebody who doesn't live there. But
just being the governor, you know, of the entire territory, he was in one town quite a bit.
But it would make more sense in the next year to have him based out of Capital City and show him there doing some of his work, and then have him visit Hope Valley for part of the time as well.
Yeah, no, I agree completely. I would love to see scenes taking place elsewhere. And like you said, the governor can't stay in Hope Valley forever, but Chris is such an amazing addition to the show. We don't want him to go either.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to see how they work it. But let's go to Lee's many let's go to Lee's many humorous conversations that he had in this episode. So the first one is when he's talking to Rosemary when they're walking, and he's talking about his own grand vision, a grand vision of your own. And, you know, back to that married people banter, you know, care to share? Oh, you're going to get it out of me anyway. Yes, I will.
Which we talked about in our last podcast was a continuation from Rosemary getting all Elizabeth's secrets about Nathan
out of her. Yes. But I also loved when Lee said, I can't imagine you having kids. And then Rosemary said, can you picture us as grandparents? Actually, let's not rush things.
We don't need to go there.
It was such a stark and quick contrast that I just went,
yeah.
It was funny. It was really funny. I really enjoyed it.
Well, especially when you think about how resistant to children Rosemary was in the past, she probably has not really considered being a grandmother.
Yeah, very, very true. And then we have Lee talking to Mike, who is so happy. So happy. I love seeing Mike so happy. And when he said, I guess I should be nervous, but I'm just so happy. And then he gets all freaked out. Am I jinxing it being too happy? I just went, dude, you gotta calm down.
I you and I are always talking about how they can have differences
Yes.
from past seasons, from past episodes, and that is something we've talked about it specifically with Elizabeth, but it is something they've had so many weddings on the show. Not every season, but many seasons have had a wedding. And so it is difficult in a small town with a small group of people to have noticeable differences between each wedding
Yeah.
as they're filming these. You want to have weddings because that really is just such a statement of like what Hope Valley is. Like there's so much hope in a wedding. There's so much hope at the beginning of a marriage, like all the plans for the future. Like that just it fits so well in this show.
Yeah.
But you also don't want to be having an episode that is exactly like 6 other episodes you've had on the show before. And it
Right.
was amazing to me that they could do a wedding here in season 11 after so many other weddings. And it was both stereotypical, the whole jokes about, cold feet and people getting nervous about a wedding. And yet it was still so different from every other wedding we have had on the show. And it fit the characters to a T.
Very much.
I,
Let's
I just found that amazing.
let's go back to the cold feet conversation. And that was when Lee was doing this, digging a hole for himself and then trying to climb back out of it.
There were so many pieces of that scene that just resonated.
I mean, he started it off as a complete joke. Why are you afraid he's going to get cold feet? And then May starts out, are you serious? And so then they're trying to calm her down. And then she's, okay. Marriage is based on trust. And Rosemary says, good point. Then she kind of looks at Lee and he goes, what?
And all the while, Lucas, who's also groomsman, is right behind them with the best facial expressions.
Gosh, I had trouble bringing my focus forward to Lee and Rosemary, and that's never hard for me to do. But I had trouble bringing my focus forward to watch them because I could not keep my eyes off of him. He was so hysterical with all of his. It's just all.
Yeah. You and I talked about this before off camera. Lucas is going through so much turmoil in his head
Oh,
that he honestly didn't have a big outward role in this episode, which at first I was a little sad about, but it made so much sense because everything he's going through now is internal. He really isn't having an outward storyline, anything much that he has to deal with other people. A lot of
not anymore.
a lot of planning. Like, yes, he's trying to figure out his next move in his own head. It is a very personal internal battle that he's going through right now. And so in that sense, I felt it was so perfect that most of his acting in this episode was very much body language and facial expressions.
Reactive.
And so it was a great example of how he's the governor, he's dealing with all of this personal stuff, he's, being called to resign, he's having to decide what direction he's going, what he even wants in life still. And yet he is still visiting his hometown, spending time with his friends, participating in a wedding as a groomsman to a dear friend of his.
Don't forget, he was actively participating with the drums.
And that was my favorite part, is he was even one of the people that was beating on a drum in the procession. And it's like, it's so neat to see somebody who is in like a position of power, is very well known, and is then participating at the same level as everyone else in something that is meaningful to someone who is a dear friend, but also was like a subordinate of his. Like
Yeah.
he was his boss, but he's now doing this for them.
Mm-hmm.
And so to see him also kind of taking that back seat in some of the scenes, but still being a focal point because he's such a good actor, and the character cares so much about his friends and being
Yeah.
part of a community, which I think is the best part about Lucas that we got out of the last several seasons,
Mm-hmm.
is how meaningful that is to him to be part of a community.
Yeah. And really quick, this is the only mention I'm going to make, I promise.
Sure.
But, when Elizabeth comes and tells him about going to the wedding with Nathan, and he kind of does his, ah, and
Yeah.
I just didn't want you to be surprised. And he said, no, I'm fine. I'm fine. You really see that he is fine when Nathan comes up right beside him to say that he checked with headquarters and there'd been no reports of a man with Mike's description in an accident. They were
Right.
standing this far apart, and Lucas is actively listening and reacting like, okay, that's good. Uh-huh.
Yeah.
He didn't have any problem with Nathan right there.
No. And I
And
feel like if they wanted him to allude to that, that would have been so simple to just have him, back away from him a little bit or tense up a little bit.
Mhm.
Chris and Kevin are so good at that type of indirect acting, where it's
They've
just
had to do
like,
a lot of it.
I feel like that would have been very easy for each of them to portray a discomfort or just an unease with the situation, even when they're distracted by the situation with Hickam. I still think that could have easily been played into that. And that I would have been fine with that. It would make
Mhm.
sense if you're still a little bit nervous around each other at this stage,
Yeah.
but there was none. And that really, to me, was not about we're wrapped up in this issue. That really was, we have grown, we're both in good places, and we
Mhm.
respect each other.
Yeah. Absolutely. So let's talk about that scene because
That
it's so cute.
So outside of anything related to Nathan and Elizabeth, that is definitely, I think, my favorite scene. And it's at least comedic. It's my favorite comedic moment.
Sure.
Um, because it honestly, it showed the community of men all coming together, trying to support someone who has done so much for this community in so many ways, but has never been a major player. Even when he was the mayor, he really wasn't a major player in the town because he
No.
didn't know how to take charge.
Yeah,
But they love him.
they
They
do.
care for him. Not a single one of them is thinking he ran off on May.
No.
They're very worried. This is not Mike Hickam to disappear like this on an important day,
Yeah.
no less.
Yeah. I loved Henry's line because let's think about how many men in that circle he worked for. He worked for Lee, he worked for Lucas, he worked for Ned at the very beginning when he was a stock boy, and he worked for Henry. Man,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think Bill's the only one that he didn't work for.
Oh,
And
and
well,
Nathan.
Nathan, he didn't work for Nathan. But yeah, there are two men. There are two men in that whole circle that he didn't work for. And then Joseph, we've already thought this through, everybody. Joseph is helping decorate the church because all of those high points with all of those banners and tapestries, the ladies can't reach all of them. So
That church was transformed, and it was so gorgeous to
it
see it
was beautiful.
transformed in a way where it was still totally the church, because we've seen that space transformed to be other buildings for
Right.
the, like we talked about with set changes. In fact, I don't even think I realized until yesterday when Sophia was watching season 10 that it was the hotel that
Oh, you
that
didn't.
Bill went and found Jamie and Madeline at.
Yeah.
And I was wondering, I was like, that's the church.
Back to the conversations.
I know.
But
So very, very cool that they could change it while still making it completely recognizable.
yes, yes. But within that conversation, just I love how they're trying to come up with reasons why he would go to Buxton. And I loved Henry's. He could have picked a better time to make a more romantic gesture.
Yeah.
Or no, he could have picked a better time. He could have
Yeah.
picked a better time to make a romantic gesture. And Ned, the owner of the general store, is like, what does Buxton have that we don't? What do I need to start carrying? And then Bill is
Apparently
going,
rings.
huh?
Rings and Chinese decorations.
Yeah, apparently. Apparently we need more
Drums.
engagement rings, but you can special order them, right?
Yes,
But
but
no,
he needed them today.
they're not there exactly. And then Bill goes to the Mountie side of him and says, I've had visions of him in a ditch somewhere. And Lucas is the one who suggested that he wanted to go to Buxton to get a special gift for May. Because, he said, this man's worked under me. I've taught him a thing or two. Maybe he's learning how to be more sophisticated. And he went to
Right?
another city to get his fiance something special. I don't know.
Yeah.
But yes, they were all concerned. They were all worried. They don't. I had to imagine Lee was looking down because
Yeah, because he
came
should be
right.
facing him.
Yeah, he came right there, and Lee was right here, and he was facing him. So I had to imagine that Lee was looking down, kind of doing, where could he be? Where? Or he
Yeah.
grabbed a bottle or something, and then, gee, that sounds serious. At least he didn't realize, at least he wasn't oblivious to the fact that he was cutting it close. I mean, because he said, well, you told me to take as much time as I needed. Well, not today.
Not without telling someone.
And of course,
Especially telling someone that you're going to Benson Hills to see your mother and then not doing that.
because when a man is missing, it's time to call in the Mounties. That was another adorable scene between Lee and Rosemary. Okay, can I just do a little insert here and say I loved Rosemary's red blouse with the ruffles right here at the neck and the collar, and then to add that red coat when they're talking to Lucas about the national park. I went, wow, that's really pretty. That is really pretty. And then going on with talking about Rosemary and Lucas and Lee, the three of them have a talk in 2 points. Lucas apologizes in the first conversation. Lee has no hard feelings. None. I mean, Edwin said no hard feelings, but I seriously doubt that's how he felt.
Yeah.
And Lee has no hard feelings. He's just reaches out his hand, shakes it, apology accepted. No questions asked.
They deeply know it was not personal.
Yes.
They understand the stress he was under. They understand all those outside factors.
Yeah. And then going to the next conversation at the end of the episode, when Lucas says, I want you to come to Capital City with me to get the ball rolling. Before he reveals that, he says, if you still want to work with me. And what does Lee do? Oh, please, of course I do. Just, why are you even saying that? Of course I do. That is not a question.
It's water under the bridge.
Yep. And that's one of the things that I love about Lee. Rosemary sometimes takes a little bit longer, but even she doesn't hold grudges like she used to. And, she's still mad at Bill, but that's okay, but to Lucas, she's not. Everything's fine as far as she's concerned.
Mhm.
And, once Bill apologized, everything was okay with the two of them. I want to insert this right here since we're there. I do think that she overreacted a tiny bit because Bill did explicitly say Lucas didn't want anyone to know. This was an order from the governor to keep it quiet. And she's going on about, you didn't trust me. Sweetie, that's not fair.
It isn't, but I completely understand her feelings about it.
No, I 100% understand her feelings, but that wasn't fair of her to say to Bill because it was an order from the governor. He's their friend, but he's still the governor.
Well, technically, the governor asked her not to print something that she did, so.
I know. And that there was attention brought to that.
Yes.
Going against the governor, it's a risky thought. But so now, so we talked about how Lee is handling things. Let's talk about how Rosemary is helping handle sticky situations. Your favorite scene outside of the romantic stuff was the men. My favorite scene was the women trying to calm May down. Just Rosemary coming in, hello, it's somebody's wedding day. Fiona doing the breathing and going, no, the look on her face was completely priceless. I loved it. That's probably one of my favorite shots that isn't romantically linked. That's my favorite shot in the whole episode is Faith and Fiona holding her hands, Faith being the doctor, breathe, calms down, get your heart rate slowing down, get oxygen in your lungs. And then Fiona is keeping on going. Like, Rosemary, stop. No. So perfect. And it was so comedic. The timing was incredible.
It was great. And the Minnie with her. So, no.
Did you see the tweet that Aaron sent out saying,
Oh, I think so.
love Natasha's reading of that? And she said, I didn't even realize it came out like that. I said, man, that's comedy gold right there for the screen. It was perfect. Yeah. So, but yes, Rosemary's Coulter guarantee. So, no.
And piggybacking on what you said, Kayla being back for this episode as Fiona, so amazing. I'm sure they didn't know if that was going to work timing wise. Yeah. That's so wonderful that she was able to be there and do this episode.
Oh, I'm so glad.
It makes so much sense because it's one of those things where when actors leave shows, you don't know if they can come back with their new schedules and filming other things and being in other parts of the world, possibly other countries. I don't know where they're filming all of this stuff, but when it works for a special occasion like that, it's like, yes, in real life, yeah, back then in the 20s, people couldn't travel necessarily from Nashville all the way back to Canada for a wedding. That would have been a big trip, really hard trip back then. But they would have tried.
Yeah.
If they could have. Yeah, you're not going to get every friend and every family member coming back for these things. But you are occasionally going to get one or two, and that just makes it all the more real. And Kayla was able to step in, having been gone for 11 episodes, and really just step right back into that role of Fiona.
It felt like she
Fiona
never
was able,
left.
yeah, Fiona was able to interact with her friends in exactly the same way she did before she moved.
Yeah. So I just want to, while we're here, I want to go back to Rosemary, but I want to say her toast to Mike and May's everlasting happiness. The love that you two share inspires us all. But my favorite Fiona line was, well, no, I've got to cut. Did I call it or did I call it? That's my favorite Fiona line in the whole thing.
And having just rewatched the end of season 10, I have such appreciation for her meddling.
As did everybody else that day. 100%. Okay, so back to Rosemary really fast. There's one thing that I want to point out. Did you notice that the entire episode she was calling him Hickam? And then, yeah, she was calling him Hickam. And then in the parlor, she says, "You and Mike." She starts out with Hickam, but she says, "If I know Hickam, and I do, he has a perfectly good reason for disappearing like this. You think so?" And then, "You and Mike are going to tell this story to your grandchildren." And I thought it was such a tiny little thing, but Rosemary has always called him Hickam. And then when she's talking to May, first she starts out with the old habit of calling him Hickam, but then she goes into, "You and Mike are going to be telling this story to your grandchildren," and have them rolling on the floor about how grandpa kept grandma in suspense on their wedding day. And that was Rosemary trying to make everything better. And I think Rosemary showing a little bit more respect for Hickam in that it's his day. This is his bride. I need to use his name.
Well, and I think just making it more personal with her.
Exactly.
That's obviously what May calls him. So,
Obviously.
like, just helping her come back down. I also liked the connection with grandchildren because of the conversation that Lee and Rosemary had at the beginning, and her not really wanting to imagine herself as a grandparent yet. But I can throw that out for other people. Yes.
Yeah, completely. So also with Rosemary's personality, when May said about the dress, "You think it's too much?" I'm like, "You're asking Rosemary?" That's the
She's not
wrong
going to tell you.
person. Yeah, that's the
Not really.
wrong person to ask if it's too much. But Rosemary, instead of drawing the attention to herself, "You could never have anything that's too much in my eyes," or anything like that. She says, "A bride like no other. You are perfect." Rosemary is really learning how to make it about other people. And that is something that has been so subtle, but it's happened, and it's happened all throughout. And I love it. I love that they are giving her that. It's a way that Rosemary can grow.
Agreed.
Okay, so I'm going to save the wedding for last. I want to go to
Okay.
Joseph and Minnie really quick.
Perfect.
Yes. So, first of all, Minnie's conversation with Elizabeth, did it bring to mind their very first conversation to you?
I don't know very first, but it definitely immediately was like, oh, this is like a blast from the past on their relationship. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Because the thing that I noticed the most is how differently Minnie reacted. I thought about it at first and I thought it's not happening yet. And she's gonna go to college and she's gonna go study at a school for the blind so that she can be a teacher. Great. But then I thought about how Minnie has kept her daughter very close for so many years. I mean, the fact that she let her go to school was a big step for Minnie. And
Oh,
that,
yeah.
yeah, and that first conversation that Elizabeth and Minnie had, Minnie was very cold and very dismissive of, no, I school her. You do not need to take my place. And now, even though hearing this news that Angela might want to study in Hamilton, it's not even a set thing. She didn't come in and say, I want to study in Hamilton, but Minnie's obviously rattled that her daughter wants to go so far away, but she doesn't react. She says, this bothers me. Elizabeth immediately says, I'm sorry if I overstepped. And Minnie was so quick to reassure her, you didn't. I'm overreacting. That is such a huge step for Minnie.
Hmm.
Huge for Minnie.
Yeah. If you think about this, the part that I felt made it harder for Minnie was that she was hearing it, overhearing it between the girls. I actually think she would have taken it better if Angela had approached her and said, Mama, I just want to let you know that Mrs. Thornton gave me this information. It's something, I don't know if it's what I want, but it is something that I didn't know existed and might be an option for me someday. You know, I
That's a good
think
point.
it's possible that that would have set better with Minnie. I still think she would have been nervous as heck about it, but because I think every parent is nervous about their child moving far away from home for any reason.
Yep.
And in a situation like this, there were many years where Minnie probably imagined Angela's future as always being close to her because
Yeah.
it would have been necessary in
Yeah.
that time frame. There weren't options for blind people to go live on their own, to go to college, to make it without being dependent to a certain degree on their family.
Well, and to not get too political, but the times being what they are, that's going to go down even lower for African American people. So,
Mm-hmm.
so Minnie probably just thought that she would spend the rest of her life taking care of Angela.
Yeah, it to some degree, for sure. And so I would imagine no matter what, this was going to be a difficult conversation, but having overhearing it when it's not even directed to you, your daughter's not even sharing this big news with you, you would feel an increase in nerves about that. Like I'm not even getting the information. I'm not even sure if this is what she wants. I'm not even included enough to feel like I can ask her clarifying questions about this because I'm not even part of the conversation. So I feel like that probably put her walls up a little bit quicker and a little bit higher than she normally would have reacted to that.
But then look how quickly it came down.
Exactly.
And the
Because she is very introspective and she's able to think, look at herself and reflect on what are the cause of these feelings.
yeah. And she shared her concerns with her husband, which is what a person is supposed to do. You know? And Joseph, of course, he had the reaction, Hamilton, that's so far away. But he said, well, it's like the poets say, we give them roots and wings. Joseph always knows what to say. It's
Sure has the words.
and apparently a lot of things that I've been hearing about Viv is he's almost exactly like that in real life.
Wow.
He just has a gift for words and he has a gift for staying calm. The other thing that I loved about Minnie, she has integrated herself into Hope Valley. She is a woman
Mhm.
of Hope Valley now, which also in the beginning did not care to be.
Right.
They were just trying to,
She had never been welcomed into a community.
no. And she just wanted to go someplace where her daughter could live in peace and they would tolerate her and they would tolerate their family. And now look at her. She's integrated into the community. And yes, that is from the efforts of everybody in the town, but it's also from her efforts and Joseph's efforts. They've put themselves into town and they've done this incredible thing with making themselves part of this community. And there it happens two places that I really love. One is in this episode and one was in episode 11, but I forgot to mention it. When Faith was complimenting Minnie about Joseph outdoing himself with the ceremony, when Fiona and Faith both said the ceremony was beautiful, Joseph outdid himself. Minnie said, "Of course, it was for one of our girls." And I went, because with Lily, Faith and Minnie were talking, and Minnie says, "Anything for our Lily." They're her
Mhm.
girls now. They're our girls, not Hope Valley girls, not your girls, not anything like that. Our girls, our Lily. It's beautiful. And to see somebody who should have been closed off becomes such a mother and big sister figure. All of these women look up to her, all of them. And,
Yeah.
they are, Joseph and Minnie are the family setting, I would say, because yes, Rosemary and Lee have been married for 8 years, but they still have a baby, because it took them so long to have children. Minnie and Joseph have been married for a very long time, obviously, because Angela's getting ready to graduate school in a couple of years. And they have two kids that are way past the small children age. So they're kind of the established family of Hope Valley now. And
Mhm.
it's beautiful. And then she takes that sentiment and she throws it into the community by giving Mike and May so many beautiful touches for their wedding. I loved seeing the cake in stages. Did you love that?
That was awesome. That was
The,
really awesome.
the cake coming out of the oven, the cake being totally iced but not decorated yet. And then, of course, the decoration with the topper. I loved watching the cake in stages and her saying, "No fuss is one thing, but I refuse to let Mike and May get married without a proper wedding cake." I was like, "You go, girl."
Yes.
Yes, yes.
Yes. And and then she's taken ownership over this cake, but then completely is willing to take advice and ideas from May's brother to make it more fitting for them. So sounds like it was his idea to trim it out in red and then also add the topper. So just that's amazing. It's just such the sign of community.
Mm-hmm. And she didn't even know Bo.
Yeah.
Okay, before we go to the wedding, let's talk about the other bridesmaid that we have not, and Flower Girl that we have
And
not
Flower
mentioned.
Girl.
That we have
Thank
not
you.
mentioned. Thank you. Oh, goodness.
Such a sweetheart.
Yes. And, you know, if this offer to go to Nashville would have happened at the beginning of the season, Faith would have been gone like a shot.
Yep. I think so, because she was really searching for purpose at that point.
Mm-hmm. And Mike and May were getting closer and spending more time together. Things obviously had not worked out with Nathan and Faith, and
Or Hickam and Faith.
or Hickam and Faith. And then Fiona left town.
Yeah.
So she didn't feel a huge tie there other than being the town doctor. And of course, that makes her care for everybody and taking care of everybody. But in taking care of Lily, have you noticed that Minnie and Faith have gotten closer as friends?
Yeah. She
Because
needs some mom friends. You
she
just
needs mom friends, which Elizabeth was so sweet. This is on a previous episode, but Elizabeth was so sweet to say, "You are a mother." Because Faith was insisting, "No, I'm not a mother. I'm just taking care of her." Like, no, you are being a mother to this girl. And so she has really started hanging out with Minnie a lot more because Fiona has been gone and May has been preoccupied with I almost said Ben. May has been May has been preoccupied with Mike. And I think that she has really come to have a close kinship with Minnie because, well, number one, they have to eat at the cafe so often because Faith doesn't cook very well. So, and
Oh, and they live there.
they live there. That too. So,
Small piece. Yeah.
but I've really noticed that they've started putting Faith and Minnie in a lot of scenes together, and I think that it's a beautiful progression of
Yes.
time.
Mm-hmm.
How many times has Minnie said, "Try this, try this"?
Mm-hmm. And since this is now permanent,
It's permanent.
um, it's permanent.
And she's a doll,
And
by the way.
she's amazing. And Chloe McKinnon, who plays Lily, has already been to some fittings for season 12. So we do know the same actress will be back.
Yay,
And Lily will be continuing. Yay.
yay.
And so it's such a great storyline to bring in. And we've had the storyline before with people taking care of older children going through adoption. We had Cody and Becky, and then obviously Allie being adopted by Nathan as her uncle. But it's a nice way to just really, really show that families come together in all shapes and forms, many different reasons
Yeah.
that they come together, and that family is not simply blood.
I love you, sis.
Oh, I love you too.
And on a much lighter note, think of the adorable things that can happen with Jack and Lily becoming friends.
I would love to see that. And there's always just been that hint of an interesting dynamic between Elizabeth and Faith that I would like to see explored a little bit more, and have
Yes.
like they like each other. They've gotten along for years now, but I think it would be a great friendship.
It would. And just having, they talked about sometimes, especially when John Tinker was the showrunner, I heard him say this once that he tried to get different people who hadn't been scene
Mm-hmm.
partners in a scene together. And we've seen Faith and Elizabeth in the same scene, but not as much with this, and certainly not as moms while the kids have a play date. And so I would love to see that
That'd be
dynamic,
very
and
cute.
to, yes, have Lily and Jack playing together, and then Faith and Elizabeth just talking, and it doesn't have to be about anything serious. If they want to go there with, I almost dated Nathan, but he was the right fit for you, or whatever. If they want to do that, yes, but please don't put any hurt feelings in there, please. Because it didn't
Oh,
it didn't
no.
seem like Faith had any hurt feelings with
Mm-mm.
ending things before they began. And so just seeing just seeing them interact as moms would be so
Yeah.
much fun. And I would love to see a ton of that next season.
And I almost wonder if they did this in the way that they did it with a child the same age as Highland, little Jack, in order to, not necessarily in order to get Faith and Elizabeth and scenes together, but in order to have another child in the town the same age that can start school with him,
Yeah.
that can just be that buddy
Yeah.
for him.
Give him a friend.
Yeah.
Because, of course,
They
Jack
could,
and
yeah,
Goldie
they
are,
could have created some random family, but
yeah,
this way you've got it tied to an existing character and it can just progress a little more naturally with the same characters.
right. And, Jack and Goldie are adorable, but there's a,
Yeah.
bit of a difference. But yes, now he has a friend. Now he has a friend his own age that he can start school with and interact with. Yeah, it's going to be great. It's going to be great. And I love that they did this, because even though it's very, very hard to be a single mom, there are so many women out there who are not getting a biological chance to be a mom. And they yearn for it so much. And so to see a woman like Faith, who was feeling completely out of purpose, having purpose again, and getting to connect with this little girl, it it gives you almost a sigh of relief on her behalf.
Yeah, I
Okay,
agree.
are we ready
So
now?
sweet.
Are we ready now?
Yes,
Okay.
I think so.
Are we ready to talk about the wedding? Okay, first thing I want to say is the dress reveal. Was that perfect, or was it perfect?
It was beautiful. I loved how everyone was seeing the dress in the box and like giving their exclamations. And it was, still a secret. And then everybody's seeing her in the dress before we see it. Oh, it was filmed beautifully.
It reminded me of when Florence was choosing her wedding dress for to Ned, because they showed the dresses in the mirror and they alternated. Do you remember that?
Yes.
Yeah, it was one of my favorite shots in the whole episode. Just no, no, no. Yeah, just, and then that, yeah, it was funny. And so for them to still use the mirror to do the reveal,
Mhm.
and Rosemary standing in front of her, putting on finishing touches, and then step aside and bang, there she is. And to quote Mike, holy smokes.
Oh, I mean, just such a beautiful bride, but I love how the jokes were that Mike was stepping away from tradition. But the fact is that they were incorporating different traditions
Yeah.
as well. It wasn't solely stepping away from traditions with things like having a best woman instead of a best man. That was probably pretty modern for its time, but
Just a little.
just a little. But I do think that majority of the differences with this wedding were because they were embracing May's culture and May's family. And the way that she had always imagined getting married as a little girl. And so that's just so meaningful and important that they were able to blend that and really have it be meaningful to both of them.
Well, and we've said this before, but if there's any character in Hope Valley who would take this head on, it's Mike.
It's Mike.
Totally,
Yes.
totally accepting, totally open, totally sweet about everything. He is the first choice to have a blended culture marriage because he's so
100%.
open to anything. Yeah. So I made a list. It's not as long as I thought it would be, but I made a list of the traditions that he broke, but then that there are traditions that he either fixed or took from May. So the traditions he broke: no bachelor party, which they tried to fix, but he still broke it. But with good cause. No engagement ring, which he fixed. Okay, do you think that May was just trying to make it easy on him? Like, no, you don't need to give me an engagement ring. Or do you think that she actually felt that way? Because her reaction when she got the engagement ring was pretty elated.
My guess is it was the financial aspect. We don't
Okay,
need to
yeah.
spend money. You don't need to spend money on me. We're buying rings. It's a short engagement. It's not like, if we were going to be engaged a long time, then you might want a token that you're wearing now, but it happened fairly quickly. So I could I could understand the piece of like, yeah, we don't need to spend an extra token on something that's for a very short period of time.
To quote Lee,
Save the money, don't stress about it.
oh, that's sweet and practical. I
Yes,
mean, it is. It's totally sweet and
it very
practical.
much is.
And then the best woman instead of the best man. So he was breaking three traditions. He said, we're breaking with so many traditions.
Well, May also said that she wasn't having a shower.
She didn't have a shower. That's true. Yeah. Okay.
So that
But
is one more.
so four.
It wasn't Mike specifically, but for the wedding.
Yeah. So four. But then I love how he said, we came to collect the bride. Bo said it's tradition. And where on earth did they get those Chinese drums? I do not know. But
Buxton.
Buxton.
Sorry, Ned.
But
I also, the umbrella, which I think it has another name. Might be
I
called
would call it
parasol.
I would call it a parasol. Yeah.
Yeah. And there might be another traditional word for it. But I loved that must have been a tradition as well. And clearly, Florence was in on what needed to happen with that. And I love just that indirect, like her taking it to them, giving it to Fiona because she was the right person in this wedding party to do that, but then also being like, to go with her.
She didn't have a single line in this episode, but she was so great.
Beautiful.
But yes, so the traditional Chinese wedding gown, the tradition of collecting the bride with that radiant smile. I mean, when Mike is walking up to the cafe and he can't stop. He can't stop smiling. And I would say that he broke a tradition of not giving the bride a gift, because I don't consider the engagement ring a gift, but he did because he went and got her brother. So
Yeah.
that was beautiful, that Mike is so selfless, and what is making him nervous, oh, that's traditional.
Yeah.
Lee and Bill, well, that's traditional. Oh, very true. So, but the reason why he's so nervous is because he wants the day to be perfect for May. And it was touch and go, but when everything works out, good luck slamming that thing off his face with a sledgehammer, because it wasn't going anywhere.
Mm.
And
So happy.
I wrote this down. Of course I did. But May, you are, without exaggeration, the most beautiful sight I've ever seen. Holy smokes is good, but that's a little better.
It's good to elaborate. Elaborate a little bit.
Yeah, let's take it just a step further. Did you see? I actually rewound it when I was watching the wedding. I rewound it to watch this part. Did you see that when May and Mike took hands, Ben did the whole rubbing of the hands thing that everybody made such a huge deal out of when Jack and Elizabeth got married? Did you notice that?
I noticed. I didn't necessarily notice the hand rubbing, but the taking of the hands and the real strong focus on it, because I was like, this is what they do at Hope Valley. I feel like they've done it at a few others, not to that same extent.
But they've had the focus
like,
for a minute.
That close up of the hands. I just think that's such a key moment for brides and grooms often.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. When I held hands with my husband, oh, I couldn't stop. The waterworks were just flowing. I couldn't stop. But yeah, he rubbed his thumbs over her hands, and I just thought it was a beautiful callback. I don't even know if he did it on purpose, but it was a callback to me because I remembered that. And then it was just a tiny gesture that proves how complete this character is, because Mike is so completely in love with May. And so even when he's only holding her hand, he's touching her as much as he can.
Yeah.
And did you also notice that I thought this was interesting that Joseph didn't say, "You may now kiss the bride." He just kind of gestured with his head.
I know. I was like, we just reading each other's minds now? Okay.
But what I loved is that oh gosh, what do I do? He didn't let go of her hand.
Yeah.
He kept a hand and pulled her into him and put his other arm around her so that he could hold her fully. And yeah, he didn't let go of her hand, and he just pulled her to him, and it just, oh my gosh, that's such a beautiful moment. I don't know who choreographed that scene. I don't know if it was Ben and Amanda. I don't know if it was Peter. I don't know who choreographed that scene, but that was perfection. That was perfection. I loved it.
Yes. And I also wanted to just give a shout out to Amanda. She was live tweeting from somewhere in the world. It was 3 or 4 a.m. where she was, and she was still like, hey, I am the bride. I need to be here for the Hearties. I am here to live tweet with you. I don't know if I'm gonna make it all through the night, but she did. And that was for the East Coast. I'm sure she didn't stay up for West Coast, unfortunately. But such a sweetheart, and I love her being part of Hope Valley.
I do too. She was so sketchy when she first came, and now I can't imagine Hope Valley without her, especially now. And
yes, of course,
she gave a place for such a beloved character to have a place. We've been wanting this for Mike for a very long time.
Oh yes.
And she has now given him that. And I am 100% behind the notion that storylines don't have to end when you're married. So I dearly hope that Nathan and Elizabeth do get married. I'm glad they didn't get married this season. I didn't
Yes.
want that. It would have been too much too soon. I want
Would
to
have felt
see
rushed.
them. I want to see them date for a little bit. I want to see them be together romantically. But we are going to get to see a newlywed and honeymoon phase with Mike and May. And we haven't really gotten that. We got a little bit of it with Florence and Ned, but because they were so much older, I don't think it focused on it as much. So we got a little bit of it with Rosemary and Lee, but we haven't had a real honeymoon phase besides Jack and Elizabeth. I was going for not main characters. So
Yeah.
we haven't really had that since Lee and Rosemary. And so I'm really excited to see Eminem as Eminem. MNMH.
Yes.
It's going to be great. I'm so excited.
It is really going to be great. Double happiness.
Double happiness. So beautiful.
All
All right, Hearties, we better end there before we end up as puddles on the floor again. Have a beautiful morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are in your day. And we will see you next time. We will have a next time. That I can promise you. We are not going to disappear for the whole summer like we had to last year.
No,
But we have plans. We have
we
things
have
that we are
plans. We've
going.
we've already recorded one other thing, so
Yes, we have, but it is. So we will be back. So enjoy all of creation around you. Enjoy your family, enjoy your friends, enjoy the people that you have made family. Bye, Hearties.
bye, Hearties.